Tonight on 24 Frames, Berkley White takes us on a journey into the blue with his breathtaking underwater photography. Former Poet Laureate Robert Hass explains the importance and beauty of poetry. We get a behind-the-scenes look into the Blue Light Singer-Songwriter competition and a live performance from the winner, Jerry Serrano. 24 Frames starts right now.
It is truly peace, to be able to be in that environment. There's no better meditation or peace than to put yourself in a situation where you're slightly challenged, but you feel like you have the skill set to kind of pull something off, and so that your brain's like really focused. That kind of eliminates everything else. And then to be in the underwater world where you're completely weightless, where we truly swim, it's a 3D world. We can go up, down, left, right, go upside down. So that kind of freedom put together with this kind of focus that you need, there's just nothing better. When I was 11, I went to Possum Kingdom Lake. My grandfather had a cabin there, and I saw these scuba divers at the lake. And so I decided kind of then and there that that was what I wanted to do. My grandfather took me down to Lubbock National Bank, and I got a loan for $200. And so I mowed a lot of lawns, paid that off, and that was my certification class to get certified, and bought my first set of scuba gear. Really in college, I threw myself at photography. And of course that was the film days, so we're burning a lot of film, and so you're saving up money to buy film and then get it processed, and then to find out, oh, that whole dive is nothing but black. Cut my teeth on that, and then I started all of my projects in science were all image-based. So I wanted to do a photographic survey of this bay or a photographic survey of these animals, and I had an advisor who was like, it's always a photographic survey with you, that's not really where the science is. And so thanks to him, I pursued the photographic side. Through black and white and kind of some shooting techniques and some post-processing techniques, we can kind of get that inky black background or the perfect white background. And it's not just different, I think, you kind of focus more on the animal. And so I find that for me, I tend to look at their eyes more. I see more details on the animal. I've been doing this for so long, a lot of what we do is kind of finding the next coolest thing. I've got to dive with these giant sharks or these giant mantas, or maybe there's a place where there's 50 mantas that all come together to feed. That kind of being at the right place at the right time, adventure that's really fun. There's a lot of times where I just put the camera down. We're able to see some pretty amazing sights. So I always try to make sure that, I'm getting stuff in the can, but I've got to get stuff, in my mind too, because that's ultimately what, we're there for. I mean, there's a lot of times where I feel naked if I don't have a camera. Sometimes I feel vulnerable if I don't have a camera to throw in a giant shark mouth or something, but always just being able to witness these kind of once-in-a-lifetime scenes is pretty amazing. I'm really proud to be from Lubbock, and I think that, you know, there's a spirit of person that comes from Lubbock, and, you know, I still consider myself a Texan, and it's full of people that know how to work. You know, there's a lot of places, you know, out there where, you know, people don't know how to put in a good, hard day's work. And so I think a lot of that I learned, you know, growing up in Lubbock, I use, you know, in my daily routine. And I you know, I really know how to appreciate water. You know, growing up here, you know, we didn't have really many lakes nearby. And so for, you know, some people that live near the water all their life, they don't really appreciate it like, you know, I think I do. I really know, you know, what it's like to be without it and how great it is to be with it, and, you know, how to respect it.
In the dream, he was an old man, his woman gone, who woke early each day and made his pot of coffee and sliced bits of melon for the lizards and set them on the hard ground by the garden wall. In the dream, he was that old man. The calm mouths of the lizards, as they waited, themselves the color of dirt, meant that every creature was singular and solitary on the earth. In the dream, the woman in the elevator took out her eye. It was a moon in the dream. And I can't remember which came first, but I remember being hit by a couple of lines of poetry and I think they were from a Tennyson poem, and it must have been like when I was in the 8th grade, read it in a book, and I think it was something like, blow, bugles, blow, set the wild echoes flying, and answer, echoes, answer, dying, dying, dying. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounded cool. I didn't particularly associate with poetry, you know, but the first poem I read, I've written about this, but I won a second prize in some kind of an essay contest. And it was a gift certificate to a bookstore. And I went to the bookstore, and there was a book, and I had, what do you buy? And there was a book called A Comprehensive Anthology of American Poetry. There was one poem, and it was by Wallace Stevens, though, who's one of my heroes. But at the time, you know, of course, I had no idea. It didn't even quite occur to me to notice the name of the author. It has imagery of a fire in a fireplace on an autumn day inside a room where the shadows of the fire are flickering on the wall, and the shadows of leaves out the window are flickering on the wall, and from outside in the wind and the turning of the leaves comes the cry of peacocks. When I tried to say to myself what I felt like, what I ended up saying is, I felt like somebody was telling me the truth for the first time. I think some of this in my mind is associated with growing up in a house with quite loving but hapless parents and an addiction problem. My mother had a drinking problem. And in families, I know this from reading, study, trading stories, in families where there's addiction, people on principle lie about everything just to keep things loose and embarrassing. I don't mean, you know, if you tell tall tales or something, but there's a general atmosphere of everything's going to be okay, and you know things aren't going to be okay. And I read this poem, which isn't about anything, and I felt like somebody was not bullshitting me. I felt like somebody was, and it was thrilling to me. Can you say bullshitting on me?
Sure.
You know, poems can do lots of things. They can, you know, describe what life is like. They can protest. They can dream. They can correct the historical record. They can make new worlds. They can do, but the thing that always attracted me from the beginning was this feeling of emotional truth-telling. The first generation of environmental consciousness was during those years, my college years. I was an undergraduate at St. Mary's College, which was a classical liberal arts college, great books and all, but then I went to graduate school at Stanford where the novelist and environmental historian Wallace Stegner taught, and I mooned around outside his office, a real writer, to get to know, and he was at that time working on the Wilderness Act and stuff like, so the environmental movement felt very live to me, and I didn't think that I would be a good activist advocate kind of writer, but I thought that if I got the natural world of California down on paper, it would be that it would make an argument against it being okay to eradicate it. Wordsworth and Coleridge in the Lake Country read the German poets and started writing nature poems. And Thoreau read Wordsworth and Coleridge and wrote Walden. And John Muir read Walden and wrote about the Sierra Nevadas. And Teddy Roosevelt read John Muir, and we got the national parks. It took 100 years, but it flowed straight through poetry into the public culture. I was talking to the students today and saying, you haul black people onto this continent in chains, and then tell them these foreign stories from the Old Testament about the Jewish people in bondage in Egypt, and they listen to those stories and they start singing songs that go with millenarian longing in them, coming right out of the Old Testament. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home, or looked over Jordan and what did I see? And you get a poetic language that goes into Martin Luther King's heart and then into his language, the I Had a Dream speech, and you get the moral poetry of the civil rights movement. That there's plenty of examples of the slow over time, and it doesn't come out of this or that genius poet, and the great stuff in the poetry, I think, comes from below that, comes up from the earth of popular culture in different ways. One of the things I love about haiku is the way they pay attention to absolutely small things. This is, how would you do Lubbock? The Japanese looked at that landscape for 500 years. So they could write poems that would go, that snail, one longhorn, one short, what's on his mind? And a poem that could go, insects on a bough that's rushing downstream and they're still singing. And a poem that could go, it's a kind of poem that they do that I love. Suma Village, a urine-stained quilt drying on the line. A fall night, getting dinner, we peeled eggplants, cucumbers. It's a poem so simple and so famous that there's a plaque where it's at the monastery in Narita where the poem was written. I use it whenever I'm feeling really rattled as a kind of mantra to restore myself to sanity. Goes like this. A fall evening, getting dinner, we peeled eggplants, cucumbers. I recommend it to you as therapy and as poetry. Thank you very much.
Let's just do a quick rundown of how this is going to work. You're going to get up there, you're going to play your 2 songs. Before you get on stage, that is when you'll hand me the lyrics. I'll give the lyrics to the judges. Be tuned before you get on stage, please. We're trying to run a tight ship here. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out what our guitars are supposed to sound like on stage. Be a good sport. This is more about making friends than it is about being a competition. So we added a new portion of the competition this year. It's like a peer review sort of deal. We're going to give you a sheet with everybody's name on it. List your top 5, in order of 1 to 5, basically, so that we can get an idea for the judges of what the general consensus among songwriters is. This could potentially be a tiebreaker. All right, guys, let's draw names.
I think beyond the fact that it's a competition and it's held in blue light, the greatest thing about it, and it always has been, is the fact that these songwriters create this circle amongst themselves, and they all have this camaraderie that happens. And a lot of them may not know some of these guys that they're going to be listening to and singing with and singing alongside, but once they get in that little circle of pretty much Lubbock songwriters, regional songwriters, they're in it for life. And so I think regardless of whether it was at Blue Light or any other place, I think it's really cool how all the Lubbock musicians have come together in one spot. And it just gives the guys who don't normally have a chance to get on stage an opportunity to get the nerves out. I think that's the coolest thing about it.
They've created a culture here as far as songwriters who either are going to Texas Tech or are from here or from the area, who all feed off of each other. If like the Blue Light wasn't the place, then there would be another place for all these songwriters to meet. And it's really about the people who come into this place and get their starts on Mondays. They're able to follow in the footsteps of a lot of songwriters who have done the same thing. Kenneth O'Meara and Zach Wilkerson and Daniel Markham have all been previous winners. When an institution like the Blue Light has their name behind your name, it gives you a little bit more validity and a little bit of credit in your songwriting.
We took a warm shot of bourbon as I stared at them curtains through the alleyway. Oh, say my regrets. But look at me, a gunning for sympathy, even though...
To win a Blue Light singer-songwriter competition, it is kind of to have your name stamped on the side of the building, so to speak. If you have ever won that competition, anyone who's a Blue Light singer-songwriter knows who you are. They know what songs you sang to win. It kind of cements your place in the Lubbock songwriting community to win one of those.
I competed last fall. I made a lot of cool new friends and actually got some gigs out of the process. So I'm just trying new things, and it's always a good thing to challenge yourself and to try new things. And so I decided I'd go for it again.
Spent all those years, all those restless nights.
This is where Wade Bowen got his start. I think that's what put this place on the map to begin with. And that might have been enough to keep the tradition that we already have now, but then you got guys like Charlie Shafter and Josh Abbott and Brandon Adams running through here with all original music, and then of course had a new wave of the William Clark Greens and Kenneth O'Meara's, and I'm going to leave a bunch of people out, but I think it's just all the original artists who came through here and became successful. I don't think Blue Light would be what it is without the names that came through it.
There is, quite a bit of history and legacy, surrounding this place. I mean, the list of artists that have played here is staggering.
I moved here from Dallas last semester, and the whole reason I moved here was to come play at the Blue Light. The Blue Light is one of the most notorious bars in the Texas music scene, and a lot of us get our start here. So it's very exciting to have the opportunity to come here and learn and grow at the Blue Light.
It's different for me because I know more of the people now, so I'm gonna have more of a, oh, go get them so-and-so or this person, because not only have I known them for a year and a half and been serving them drinks, I know how their family's doing, and what their other job is, and so it's different in that way.
It's definitely a lot different to go from competing and winning the competition to judging it. Dustin is always trying to get me judged more than I'm willing to do, because I kind of take it pretty seriously and pretty hard on myself when it comes to doing it. So I usually limit myself to judging like, once a year or so.
The crowd that comes here is what bands call a listening crowd. When they go to other venues in Lubbock, they always talk about how it's completely different, and they might even have a more expensive cover, but the crowd is sitting there drinking their beer like they would have regardless of who is playing. Whereas here, people are up here in the band's face just singing along every word. They're here because they wanted to see that band, not because we'll just go to Blue Light tonight. Completely different than other venues.
When I first moved to Lubbock, it was like you wanted to play at Main Street Saloon, it's where you want to get gigs. And then later on, it's the Spoon. And for me, these days, I find the Blue Light to be the premier live music venue here. I like playing here. It's got good sound, good audiences, and people come to listen.
I'm standing in the middle of 24 years of life, but the scale's tipping closer every day to 25.
Only one person can win out of all of these talented people. I've never disagreed with, now granted I can't pay as good of attention, I'm back there bartending, but everyone that's moved on and then won have always been so talented, and I've agreed.
Second runner-up, third place tonight is Mr. Daniel Payne. Congratulations, Daniel. Our runner-up tonight, second place, is Mr. John Young. Congratulations, John. And the winner of tonight's 2015 Spring Singer-Songwriter Competition here at the Blue Light Live is Mr. Jerry Serrano. Congratulations, Jerry. Give it up for all the songwriters tonight, everyone in this competition brought their A game. I bet it was hell for the judges back there. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for listening and being a great audience.
Get out of my bed, get out of my incessant head, erase all the lines that stay inside your mind. I'm done with the lies, I'm done with the fleeting embraces and all of your social graces. Fun isn't everything. I know win, lose, and rise and fall in love and hate my life. Now that I'm on my side, my heart, my mind, there's nothing I can't do for you. Spent all those years, all those restless nights, all those constant fights, drowning in poison. Now that I see what I did to myself, can't believe I'm alive. Now I choose to live. I know I win and lose and rise and fall in love and hate my life. Now that I'm on my side, my heart, my mind, there's nothing I can't do for you. my greatest mistake was listening to what they said, holding it in and repeating it in my head. I know I'll win and lose and rise and fall in love and hate my life. Now that I'm on my side, my heart, my mind, there's nothing I can't do for you. I don't win and lose and rise and fall in love and hate my life. Now that I'm on my side, my heart, my mind, there's nothing I can't do. No, there's nothing I can't do. No, there's nothing I can't do for you. Thank you so much.
Then the world ends. I gotta walk alone. Oh, I know